I was a kid who experienced sexual abuse at a young age, and that really kind of threw my life in a trajectory that I didn't really understand. And I think it's, something that's really not talked about by a lot of men. That really made me this young, angry, pissed off kid, and I didn't know how to deal with it. 15 years old, I was kicked out of school. I was kicked out of my house, so I was basically homeless with no education, and that's where my addiction kind of really started, and that childhood trauma that I didn't know how to deal with. And that's why I think martial arts, boxing, Muay Thai, karate, whatever that is, can really help these kids build self-confidence, have a healthy outlet. Exercise is always something that's great, but building that discipline and doing things that we don't want to do for a reason that helps us grow as a person. And I had a suicide attempt that didn't work. I put a gun in my mouth, I pulled the trigger, the gun jammed, and that was kind of my pivotal moment of okay, I need to decide, am I going to continue down this life, or I'm going to be dead or in jail, or am I going to get myself into a program and start to look at my life and grow as a person. The conditioned thoughts that we have as a young child become our thoughts as an adult, and if we don't rectify those and work every day to figure out, I am enough, I can do this, I do believe in myself, because no one's going to give that to me, right? No one's truly going to give me that self-love except for myself. So to build that trust, consistently show up for them, it's pretty amazing at some of the stories that come out of that. I mean, they say the opposite of addiction is connection, and that's the opposite of a lot of things, is that connection that we crave. Our most deeply rooted motivation for this is that impact that we're having on these kids and that they're having on us.
Welcome back, Wellness Ninjas, to another episode of the Wellness Dojo Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Craik, and today I'm really excited to have TJ, my man, here. He is here from Gloves Not Guns organization, but also Pivot Society. So I'm going to throw it to you. I want you to kind of tell us about yourself, and you can tell way more about what you're doing. So who are you and what do you do, first of all?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I really appreciate you having me on here. So my name's TJ. I'm the founder of Pivot Society and Gloves Not Guns. So Pivot Society is a nonprofit that we focus on education and empowerment for people going through addiction and recovery. So whether that's loved ones, people that are actually struggling, business owners sometimes who are affected by the nuisance of addiction, and also caregivers to really understand where that addiction comes from, the childhood trauma and what are the effects, how to set boundaries, how to not be enabling. And with that, we've founded another program called Gloves Not Guns, and that is a youth boxing program that entails a lived experience speaker, no contact boxing, and life skills. So our whole kind of mission is helping kids stay away from the lifestyle of drugs, violence, and gangs through martial arts, which is, as you know, something that saved my life and something that's a really healthy outlet for a lot of these kids. There's no fighting or boxing experience necessary. There's absolutely no cost. And we just want to help build community and have that positive mentorship for these kids who definitely need it.
That's awesome. I feel like you've given that spiel before.
That one was just off the cuff.
I love it.
Yeah.
That was really good. Really good. The thing that really drew me to you, like we were talking beforehand, like I saw your Instagram and I was like immediately just like pulled in. I was like, oh, I love this concept. I love it. Anytime I see anything martial arts, I'm all for it. And to use martial arts for a really good cause like that is something that I just love. I love it so much. Well, I want to get into everything that you're doing with the program. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about you. You mentioned like martial arts saved your life. Mm-hmm. This is a common interest that we have in martial arts and the impact that it can have on your life. Can you tell us a little bit about just like how you got started in martial arts, maybe first of all?
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I was started in karate as a really young kid, and I'll be perfectly honest, I hated it because I hated the discipline. I was kind of forced into it. I was a kid who experienced sexual abuse at a young age, and that really kind of threw my life in a trajectory that I didn't really understand. And I think it's, something that's really not talked about by a lot of men. After that happened, I became very angry because I didn't know really who I was or why that happened to me. Again, I always say it's not my fault it happened, but it's my responsibility to understand why and to be better. So then I started getting bullied in school, and, that really made me this young, angry, pissed off kid, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So then I really started to stick with martial arts because it gave me that healthy outlet. It gave me, a place to vent. It gave me a place to kind of be myself. I started getting bullied in school, like I said, and then I started to fight back, and that kind of really put my life again in a negative trajectory. At 15 years old, I was kicked out of school. I was kicked out of my house, so I was basically homeless with no education, and that's where my addiction kind of really started. And that was something that I work hard on every day to overcome. It's something that I have forever, and I have to work at it. But that was kind of where it started, is that childhood trauma that I didn't know how to deal with. And that's why I think martial arts, boxing, Muay Thai, karate, whatever that is, can really help these kids build self-confidence, have a healthy outlet. Exercise is always something that's great, but building that discipline and doing things that we don't want to do for a reason that helps us grow as a person.
Yeah, that's super powerful, and so much that we could dig into with that. One thing that stands out in my mind as you said that was in terms of dealing with trauma. This is something that I've been thinking about recently. When we're dealing with trauma that has been kind of put onto us, how do we navigate? How did you go through navigating that process? Because it's like you said, it's like we go through this thing where it's not my fault, but I want to take ownership for the situation, to move past it. And it really kind of is this messy game of ownership and blame and shame, right? Mm-hmm. How did you kind of go through that?
So for me, I burnt my life down multiple times, whether it was, with addiction, whether it was involved in gangs, crime. The way that I basically got out of it, and, I had a suicide attempt that didn't work. I put a gun in my mouth, I pulled the trigger, the gun jammed. I've, shared that in multiple stories. But that was my pivotal point. And for me, 12 steps of recovery was what saved my life. So I got into a 12-step program. There, I could actually identify what my trauma was, because if I didn't know what it was or what it was doing to me, I had no idea how to, work on it. So the first step was identifying, and then starting to work through that, whether, that was, letting go of resentment. So the perpetrators or people that victimize me, I was able to forgive them because I hold on to a lot of anger for them for a very long time. And that ended up keeping me sick and keeping me in my addiction. And then just starting to learn about trauma itself and how to let my ego go, right? Being angry all the time, I had to really pull that apart and understand, why am I so angry? Well, my anger was from fear. I was actually afraid of something. So then it became, what am I afraid of, and how can I overcome that fear? So it was a lot of self-reflection, and it was a lot of working with, sponsors, mentors, people who have overcome addiction before me. And then also reaching back and helping the newcomer come through is part of my sobriety journey, where it helps me stay sober is by helping other people stay sober.
Yeah, I know there's different pillars to forgiveness in terms of recovery. Mm-hmm. And they say the hardest one is always forgiving yourself. That's always the hardest one to go through. You can forgive people for harming you and stuff, but when it comes to yourself, it's that's the tricky piece, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, that goes with loving yourself too. It's, until you can forgive yourself, you can't fully forgive other people. And until you can fully love yourself, you can't properly love other people. That's just my opinion. That's from my experience. But it really comes down to that. And I think forgiveness and love kind of go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy. It's the conditioned thoughts that we have as a young child become our thoughts as an adult. And if we don't rectify those and work every day to figure out, I am enough, I can do this, I do believe in myself, because no one's going to give that to me. Right? No one's truly going to give me that self-love except for myself.
And so you started with karate as a young child. And can you talk about that journey just a little more again?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, my father put me into karate, and it was kind of, again, I was kind of forced. I see the value in it now. Mm-hmm. But again, I think I got up to, brown belt, just about a black belt, not quite. But I wanted more of the fighting aspect. I wanted more of the punching and the kicking.
You're looking for the outlet.
The outlet, right? Exactly. A place to channel my anger in a healthy way. So then I kind of got into a little bit more of the mixed martial arts. You know, I made a lot of mistakes in that because I got really good at fighting. And then that was something when I got involved in the gang life and doing collections and everything else that really helped excel me in that life. You know, and I was just this violent, angry person. But now looking back at it, you know, I have a place where I can channel my anger. And I think one of the missions behind Gloves Not Guns is helping these kids understand that it's not about fighting and it's not about hurting other people, but it's about having that discipline to walk away, you know, having that discipline. There's a fight that's going to happen. I have the self-confidence to know that I could probably, you know, kick someone's ass, but I have the discipline to know that I'm going to walk away and, you know, live to fight another day is what we say.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because that's something that I teach my students all the time as well. Like, I'll even tell them, like, what we're learning in class really, like, because we do a lot of, like, the karate style, like, point fighting. Like, I teach kung fu, but it's point fighting style, right? And so what you're learning, like, yes, you're capable. Like, you know how to throw a punch. You've got good reaction time. We do self-defense techniques as well. But even when I'm teaching those techniques, a lot of times I'm like, I do not want you guys to feel like you are capable of using this on the street, right? Because there's so many variables, especially nowadays. Like, rarely does anybody fight one-on-one with your fists, right? Yeah. So it's such an important lesson in martial arts to know that, like, it's not about, like, whether you can fight or not. It's like, your biggest defense is, can I get out of this situation? Can I avoid this? Do I have the intuition and the sense to steer clear of that situation, or to, like, pick up on the vibe from that dude who's looking at me across the bar or something? Like, can I avoid that situation and put my ego aside? Yeah. That's what martial arts is all about, at least to me.
Absolutely. And that ego aside, I think, is something that we really try to instill in a lot of these young kids. Because, you know, for a lot of them, you ask, well, what is your ego? And they don't really know. So it's about teaching them what that is and how to deflate it in a healthy way. Because it's like, if you're going to bring a knife, someone's going to have a gun. If someone's going to have a gun, someone's going to have something bigger, a big crowd, like multiple guns. It's just, there's always someone bigger, faster, and stronger. And again, it's the ability to say no and to walk away that's going to, you know, literally save your life. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day.
Yeah. So how do you define ego? I'm curious.
For me, I mean, ego is, well, my definition is edging God out, right? And for me, you know, God is the great outdoors or spirituality or the universe. I'm not a religious man. I'm a spiritual man. But for me, every time my ego comes, I have to look at, I'm putting my spirituality aside. So whether that's material things, whether that's, you know, trying to come across as someone bigger, faster, stronger, more powerful than I really am. You know, whether that's I'm driving down the street and someone cuts me off and I feel like I have to do something about it. You know, it can show up in many different ways. I guess for me, the biggest part about ego is being true to myself and my core values. And I can feel it. It's something that I can feel internally is when I'm starting to, you know, puff my chest, so to speak. I have to really look at myself and what is that doing? Is that being my authentic self? No. So how can I overcome that, or how can I act appropriately? Yeah.
It's interesting because I've tried to make that I've tried to distinguish that in my life of, like, is this my intuition and, like, my gut feeling, or is this my ego talking? And one of the things that I read that really resonated with me was about how your ego is often that loud voice. Whereas, like, if you're following intuition and, like, following your gut, it's often like that softer voice that's like, no, come over here. Whereas the ego is like, I gotta do this right now. Like,
yeah. No, and another way too is, like, I'm either listening to my thoughts or I'm listening to my heart. If I'm listening to my heart, it's probably natural to who I am as a person. If I'm listening to my thoughts, it's probably something that's made up.
Yeah. Interesting. And so as you're working with youth who are coming in who are struggling with this, what are some of the biggest things that you're hearing in terms of ego with them?
Well, you know, I think, social media is one of them, right? It's these things on social media where someone calls someone out and then it becomes, you know, a bigger beef. And, you know, a lot of the shootings and stuff that are happening with these young kids are starting from internet beefs, right? Starting from that social media of kind of keyboard warrior, and it's spilling out into the streets. You know, so there's that. A lot of these young kids are immigrants or coming to Canada, so they're financially driven. by a different way. And yes, sometimes it's the ego and the flashy cars and the women and the jewelry. But sometimes it's just about them wanting to take care of their family and their parents. Their parents are working 2 or 3 jobs. Their younger siblings don't have that role model. And we always say, like, some of our competition for Gloves Not Guns are the drug dealers and the recruiters that are out there trying to get some of these kids with the flashy money or, the flashy jewelry or the access to easy money. So it's really about, teaching them that they can be anything that they want, and what are those transferable skills and how to access the resources, whether that's going to school, whether that's becoming an entrepreneur, having their own business. Because the reality is that lifestyle leads to 2 things, and that's death or jail.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about like kind of 12-step program and that type of, I don't even really want to say community, but that structured support. Is that also what drew you to martial arts and using martial arts to help people as well, in terms of just like the structure, the support that we talked about?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the 12-step programs are not for everyone. Everyone's journey to healing or recovery is different. I found it really worked for me because it was a simple design for living. With martial arts, I think that can correlate in so many different ways because it is a structure of discipline. It's a structure of self-confidence. It's showing up even when you don't want to. It's being a part of a dojo or a community and showing up for your peers. And the cool thing about martial arts is it spans across so many different sectors. So whether that's MMA, kickboxing, Muay Thai, karate, kung fu, boxing. So there's something for everyone, right? And people learn differently, people express themselves differently. So it's not one size fits all. And it's a big community that anybody can be a part of, whether you're young, old, man, woman, whatever it is, there's something for you in that martial arts community.
Yeah, that's a super important aspect of it too, right? It's for everyone. That's one thing I've always felt within the martial arts community. And it's it gets expansive, but it can be a pretty tight-knit community, especially within Alberta. And I've always felt that it's like, no matter what version of myself I am that day or that week or whatever, even going to tournaments and competitions and stuff, like, you just always feel welcomed. It's such a welcoming community. And I think that's obviously such an important thing for somebody who's struggling in life too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, one of the reasons why I fell into the gang life and joining a gang was because I was an only child. I didn't have that community at a young age. I just wanted to be a part of something. I wanted to be a part of that brotherhood. I wanted people who had my back. And that's why I fell into that life. And looking back now, I could have made some healthier choices. And if I had someone like me or someone, like some of the team members from Gloves Not Guns, maybe to guide me a little bit, I probably would have made a lot better choices. I don't regret anything in my past because it's brought me to where I am today. But again, it's that sense of having that healthy community and not being turned away.
I'm curious if we can talk a little bit about that, because like for me, that's a realm that like I've not experienced. I've never been in gang life and stuff like that. And I'm curious, like how, and even taking experience from some of the youth that nowadays that you're hearing from, like, how does that start? Like, how does that process start? How do you fall into that? And like, I understand, like, I want to be a part of that community and stuff like that, but I'm just curious if you can help paint like the picture a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, I can only speak from my experience or experiences that I've witnessed. I think, it's different for everyone. Everyone's journey of why they join a gang or why they get addicted to drugs is unique, and it needs a unique approach to help them get out of it. But it can be anything from, wanting to be a part of something, wanting to be protected, wanting to have that brotherhood. It can be financially driven. Kids see these gang members or these people that are doing, crime and selling drugs that have all this flashy stuff. They have the women, they have the life from the outside. So there's a lot of different factors that draw people into that. There's also the popularity thing of, if I'm going to be in this, I'm going to be popular, I'm going to be untouchable. So there's also the side of, being kind of a badass and doing things and not getting caught. So I think there's a lot of glamorization around it now with social media, with movies. And kids don't know the realities and the consequences of how fast things can happen. One decision of jumping in a vehicle with someone can be a matter of life and death, or change the trajectory of your life, as now you're an accomplice in a homicide. And it happens so quickly. So, you know, it's kind of a long-winded answer. I think it's different for everyone. I think a lot of people that get in, you know, see how cool it is in the beginning. I was really drawn to that until you actually see the realities of it, and it's a lot harder to get out than it is to get in. So, you know, I've had a lot of friends who are dead or in jail, or they're trapped in that life, and now they can't get out.
Yeah. So, and only answer what you want to answer, but how did you get out? Like, what was your way out?
Well, so one of the programs we're looking at now is a gang exit program, and two of our stipulations is you can't owe a criminal organization money, and you can't have worked with law enforcement. You know, it's kind of a fine line with the law enforcement thing, you know, but our whole value is we build trust with youth and families because we're not associated with law enforcement, so they can tell us more stuff, which allows us to help them get out safely. You know, for me, it was, you know, basically those two things. I didn't owe money. I wasn't involved with law enforcement. And I was pretty straight up about it. So it was a pretty easy transition for me. It's not always like that. I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. But again, it's kind of those two factors. And, you know, once you're kind of labeled as, you know, working with law enforcement, it puts your safety and your family's safety at risk. Same thing with owing money, right? And I'm not saying we won't work with people who owe money. You know, we'll help create a plan if possible, but that's kind of one of our stipulations for the exit program.
Yeah. And for you personally, were you on your recovery journey already, or?
No, you know, the deeper I got in, the more drugs I started using to numb out everything, and life just became absolutely crazy. It was, you know, Alberta law enforcement raiding my house, looking at 10 years in jail. I was, you know, almost killed in a drive-by. You know, the list kind of goes on, and that's where, you know, that suicide attempt came in, and that was kind of my pivotal moment of, okay, I need to decide, am I going to continue down this life, or I'm going to be dead or in jail, or am I going to get myself into a program and start to, you know, look at my life and grow as a person. You know, and I always say this, both are hard, right? It was hard to stay in that life. It was hard to get into recovery. Choose your heart.
Yeah. Right? I was just saying that with somebody else just the other day. We were talking about there's always these two choices, and like both are hard. Like both have good and both have bad. And it's like, which one do you want to choose? Like, if you want to change, it's going to be hard. But if you want to stay in the same life, like that's going to be fucking hard too. Like,
yeah. And I mean, there's no easy way. It's the hard way or the harder way.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, you know, and anyone who's out there struggling to make that choice, it has to be black and white. It's kind of the same thing with addiction. It has to be black and white. Because if there's any gray area to kind of go back in between, you're just going to fall back in between. And, you know, I find a lot of people, whether it's addiction, gang life, right when they're trying to get out, they're kind of slipping on the slope. That's when the most serious things happen, right? Is like they've made the decision to turn their life around. They haven't fully made it. And that's usually when the worst happens.
Is there a way to avoid that? Like, is there a way to navigate that smoother, do you think?
Set a non-negotiable with yourself. Has to be non-negotiable, has to be black and white. I'm done. I'm changing my life. And there's no looking back.
Yeah. And oftentimes, like, people have to get to that rock bottom, which is the sad thing, right?
That's the sad thing, is a lot of people don't live to get there, right? They die before they hit that rock bottom. Some people hit their rock bottom and it's still not enough. And it's different for everyone. And like we were talking about, you know, before the show, that window of opportunity when someone decides that they want to get help is so small. If you don't act on it right away, the chances are, you know, diminishing every moment that goes by. And if someone is opening themselves up to be vulnerable to say, I need help, because that's one of the hardest things to do in my life is ask for help, and you're turned away in a way that makes you feel small or hurts your ego or whatever that is, you're way less likely to ask for help again, right? It's that whole stigma. If you get stigmatized once, you're way less likely to reach out and ask again.
Yeah, and that's what I love about what you guys are doing is you are removing some of that stigma around it, right? Like almost making it this isn't going to sound right, but almost like when I look at your Instagram, it's like, it looks fun. Like your events look fun. It looks like a fun place to be, a fun community, and that type of thing. And I think that's really important because when somebody is ready to turn somewhere, like they need to feel comfortable somewhere. I always tell people, like, you can't change anybody. Like I can't make anybody change. As much as I love somebody and want them to be better and do those things, you can't make it. But like all you can do is make them feel and let them know that, like, I am somebody that will help you when you're ready. And I see that that's what you guys are doing. It's like this space where it's like, like when I'm ready, that looks like a good space to go.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's why we always say, like, lived experience saves lives, right? Because we've been through it. We understand. We can, come to a lot of those situations with no judgment and empathy. And if you create that safe space for someone to open up and you show up for them, a lot of these kids, people say they're going to show up for them and they don't. You have to be consistent. So to build that trust, consistently show up for them, it's pretty amazing at some of the stories that come out of that. I mean, we have one youth who's was really entrenched, was, inside everything else. He made a decision that he wants to change. He reached out to us. And now he's out and he's going to university and he's looking at, getting a career where he can actually help and give back and work with these kids. It's, I don't want to say it's 1 in a million, but, people that have overcome that life and come out the other side and now do kind of what we do, it's very small. And, that opportunity has to be supported and highlighted because it takes people like us, to help these individuals who want the help.
Yeah. So powerful. Yeah. And I imagine you have like so many different stories about different, success stories, but then also the other side of it too, where it's like, we got so close with that one and that type of thing. I'm curious for you, like we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but how do you turn it off? How do you separate it? Because the work that you're doing is heavy shit, right? Like, how do you go home at night and first of all, like just get back to just like your life, but then also not be triggered and kind of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a process over time. I hate to say it, but I am desensitized to a lot of things, and that's just from the things I've seen, the things I've experienced. Like I used to say I've lost up to 30 friends, over the last 10 years. That number has now grown. It's probably over 40. And it's really sad. But again, I've been put on this earth for a second chance at life. And this is my life's purpose, right? And there's nights where I don't turn it off. And I have, ADHD and that allows me, I use that as a strength, not a weakness, to help me, kind of run multiple programs or start multiple programs or help multiple people. But there are days when I can't necessarily turn it off. But again, that's where physical fitness, meditation, the spirituality, and the martial arts kind of encompass that's my balance, where I'm in the dojo or I'm working with these kids. That's all I'm focused on, is being in that moment. Yeah.
And that's what martial arts was for me a lot of the times too, growing up, where sometimes it was just a distraction. Even now as an adult, like going and teaching, like I love it. Like I can have the worst day and I go and teach and I walk out feeling so much better. Right. But I think there is an element of distraction there. Absolutely. Where I don't think we can get too bogged down in like the self-work. Like it's important. We need to do it. We need to be consistent and disciplined with it. But then we also need to have those outlets. We need to have those distractions. Do you think that's what that is? At least a part of what that is for some of the youth that are coming into the program too, is a different place they can go and do something different?
Absolutely. And that's one of our successes is, even if these kids are out in community making poor choices or not necessarily living up to their potential, the time that they're with us, they're at least working on themselves, they're making friends, they're around positive role models, and they're not out in community doing things. And each one of these kids have, unique stories of challenges that they face. And I think for the short time that they come and be with us, that stuff can be left at the door. And we always kind of say that, leave your problems at the door, come in here, work hard, be yourself and be respectful to others. And then, when you go back out, those problems are still going to be there. But that's part of the mentorship piece, is we actually help these kids face some of those challenges with our experience, right? And it's about sometimes asking them the questions that people don't ask them. You know, they go to school and maybe they misbehave and the teachers are just on them all day. They go home and their parents are on them all day. Well, when they come to us, they're able to just be themselves and talk freely with no judgment.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I imagine, because we were talking again before, and I did work with a nonprofit as well, where there's a fine line that it's like, it's a tricky line to kind of balance, right? And be in that space that is like, yeah, be yourself and leave your problems at the door and stuff, but then also still setting clear boundaries and still kind of instilling some of the discipline and stuff and structure that some of these kids need, right? Like they still need boundaries. Like you can't be showing up here and like passing drugs around, like stuff like that. Is that something that has been tricky for you guys to navigate?
I think these kids crave respect, and they crave, sometimes people to set those boundaries, because, a lot of times these kids are pushing boundaries with teachers or parents or, out in community. And when they come to us, it's usually a hard no. It's like, if you're going to misbehave, you can leave. And it's a privilege to be here, right? It's not an obligation. It's a privilege. None of these kids are forced to be here or have to be here. It's on their own will. They made the decision. And that's what was so successful about the program is, the first day we had 10, and then they brought friends. And then, so we had a steady, attendance of about 15 to 20 kids every time, and they wanted to be there. That was one of the things. And I think the biggest buy-in for them was the boxing and martial arts aspect. And then they had to stay for the life skills portion. And I think, sometimes it's tricky for kids to sit and talk about strengths and challenges and emotions, but I think they valued it. And I think when they stepped out of line and some of the instructors or the coaches told them, hey, this is not how you behave here, they actually respected it. And I think they craved it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Really cool. Yeah. I like that you guys do the learning aspect of it as well as and that's a mandatory piece that you guys do. Yeah.
So how it's structured is, we have a lived experience speaker come in, whether it's an ex-gang member, someone who's overcome addiction, someone who has a story to share. And if there's any people out there who want to become speakers, get a hold of me. And then we do the boxing portion, like I said, we work the kids really hard. And then at the end, we sit and go over either like a healing circle like we do in the jail, or curriculum. And that's anything from anger management, emotional regulation, strength, confidence building, social media warnings, all different types of things. And, as much as we're teaching the kids, we're also learning from these kids. So it's not just us in there plugging information. We're actually there to learn about what they're going through. And I know it was hard when I was a teenager, but I can't even imagine being a teenager now with all the challenges that are out there. It's a hard time for kids.
Yeah. It feels like life is in a spotlight now, more so than when we were growing up, right?
It's not as simple as it was. I mean, the problems that we had before the cell phones and before technology and everything else, it was challenging, but it was simple.
Yeah. Tell me about the healing circle. I'm curious about that.
So the healing circle is something that we do when we're in the jail. And basically what it is just a group of, the participants and a group of the mentors, and we just sit and go around and we give everyone a respectful opportunity to talk about what their challenges are, what they're facing, no judgment. And then usually the mentors give some of their advice or talk about some of their experiences. It's a chance for us to learn about what some of these kids are going through that helps give us a better understanding of maybe some of the behavioral challenges that they're facing, but it also gives them a chance to hear from people who have made the same mistakes or gone through the same things or similar situations, and challenge them a little bit to, provoke some of that stuff. Is like, okay, well, you're having, trouble at home, or what is your motivation for not being in here? Well, I have younger siblings and I don't want them to end up in jail because I'm in jail and my older brother's in jail. Okay, so how are you going to do that? How are you going to be a better version of yourself so that your younger siblings don't have to grow up like you did?
Yeah, that feeling of I'm not alone is just so important, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they say the opposite of addiction is connection, and that's the opposite of a lot of things, is that connection that we crave, right? And sometimes we can be in a room full of people, but if we don't feel connected, it's just as isolating as, being out in the wilderness by yourself.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of people who have grown up with kind of adverse childhood experiences, like they are that's what they know, right? That's what they expect from everybody, is they expect that, like, oh, people are going to mistreat me, people are going to use me, people are going to abuse me. To be able to come to a place like that where they can kind of dip their toes into being vulnerable, and have that feeling of safety around it. I mean, I think that's got to be just like the most powerful thing to experience.
Absolutely. And again, that's what keeps me sober and on my journey, is being able to lead by example, but to give these kids that opportunity that they don't necessarily have. And I have to be vulnerable for them to be vulnerable, right? I have to practice what I preach, but to watch some of these kids see the light bulb come on, or have that kind of aha moment of like, oh, I didn't really think about it like that, is one of the most powerful things, that we've witnessed in this program.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next, is just what that feeling is like for you, because I've seen that working with clients, even with things as simple as fitness and nutrition, where they have that aha moment, or a student that gets that aha moment even with the technique, and it's just so cool it's so rewarding to be a part of it, but also just so powerful to witness it. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of my life's purpose. We always say it's impact over income, right? We're here to make an impact. We're not here to generate income. Yes, we need money for programming and facilitators and all that kind of stuff. But our most deeply rooted motivation for this is that impact that we're having on these kids and that they're having on us, right? It's that full circle. It's like when I finish a session, I'm so hyped up with so much positive energy because of that feeling of connection and motivation and watching these kids grow, and it helps me grow. So it's like, what is better than that? It's something that money cannot ever buy. No amount.
Yeah. And then you hear the success stories, or you hear somebody who's like you said, going to university or something now and really turning their life around. Like, you just can't beat that, right?
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Have my fingers in that. Like, oh man. Yeah. So cool. Yeah. So cool. How can people support you guys? So you mentioned like you need finances, you need that type of stuff. How can people support your program so that we can make sure that it keeps running?
For sure. So glovesnotguns.ca, people can go there if they want to donate. We're always, looking for donations for, cash donations so that we can buy equipment. Volunteers, if anyone's out there that has a certain skill set or wants to volunteer or be a coach or get involved, we're always looking for that, and speakers. And then on Instagram at glovesnotgunsboxing is kind of the best way to get a hold of us. And, just if you know of any kids who may want our program or are struggling or need some mentorship or maybe are going down the wrong path, reach out to us, because we're here to help. Yeah, that's awesome. And what about you? Are you still training right now, like actively training? Yeah, so we're doing some stuff with Olympus Gym. So I train, I'm going to be training there. And again, when I'm with the kids, I'm in there training too. And then I have my other fitness regiment, weights and cardio that I do too. So that will always be a part of me. I've stepped back a little bit from my training more just to do this stuff, but it'll always be there. Yeah. I'm curious what the impact is for you, like with exercise in specific. Like, you can mix martial arts in with that and stuff, but what's the impact that has on you personally, in not even in terms of your recovery, but you can speak on that too, but just in terms of just like staying centered in life. I'm always curious what people's opinions are on exercise there. Yeah, so my life is built on the 4 pillars of recovery, spirituality, nutrition, and fitness. Fitness has always been something that, again, has really saved my life. The only way that I can describe it is if I'm having a horrible day or I'm in a bad mood, I go have a workout and I'm always feeling better. It's that endorphin rush. It's that feeling of accomplishment. It's that feeling of, if I don't want to go to the gym today and I go and do it anyway, that's what builds confidence. And it's building those little wins that, create that big win. So fitness has been and will always be a part of my life. It's just who I am, and it's what keeps me mentally healthy. And fitness can look different for everyone. I mean, I go in the gym and lift heavy weights. I also go and do spin classes where I'm on a spin bike in a room. I do boxing, I do martial arts, I do running, hiking. So I like to switch it up. And, if there's anyone out there that's curious about what fitness will do for you, it'll literally change your life. Yeah, no, that's why I like to ask that question, because I think still today, fitness is so underrated in so many people's lives. Like, they're in pain, they're depressed, they're anxious, and they're not moving. Yeah.
right? And it's like, I agree 100%. I'm the same way. I'm having a shitty day. Like, I will go and like hit a workout or go and train martial arts, and I feel just like a different person.
Yeah.
And it's kind of indescribable. I mean, of course there's science behind it, but yeah, it can literally change your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I get up in the morning, I got a really bad back, and some days I can barely even walk. I pull myself to the gym, and I'm moving like normal after. So there's just something about it that it helps so many different aspects, whether it's physical pain, mental health, addiction, depression, anxiety, any of that stuff. If you're having a shitty day, get to the gym.
Yeah. I love it. All right, I got a question for you. Do this thing. My last guest wrote a question down. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to read it to you.
Okay.
And they're going to give you that question. Then I'll let you do the same thing after. You can write a question down afterwards for my next guest.
Cool.
Sound
Love
good?
that. Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Let's see what they got us here. Okay, this is a deep one.
Okay.
You ready for it?
I think so.
What in your life are you avoiding, and what might that mean in terms of achieving your dreams?
Good question. What am I avoiding? I mean, the hardest thing for me, I would say, is turning my fear into faith sometimes. Trusting the process. It's not that I avoid it. I think it's just my conditional thinking of a child sometimes puts me into that what if. And I think sometimes that holds me back, because then I focus on what if it's going to go wrong instead of what if it's going to go right.
Yeah, I feel that too, for sure. Like I was just talking about this with somebody recently too, where it's like sometimes always just waiting to see like when are things going to unravel, like when things are going good, and you're like, when's the axe going to drop?
Yep.
Like when is like, how do you navigate that? Like how do you come back to that?
I have different ways. Again, fitness sometimes is if I'm just so in my head, financial insecurity, I'm sure, is a common one for everybody right now. And I'm just so wrapped up of like, what if this goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? Sometimes I get on my knees and just pray and say, to the universe, show me the way, show me what's going to happen. And no matter how many times I know that I trust the process and it always works out. And if I look back on my life, anytime I was like, in the nick of time, something has come through and has worked out, and I still avoid trusting the process sometimes.
Yeah.
Even though I know it's there.
Yeah. Super interesting. I'm the same way. Like I will often go back and look at past experiences, right, as evidence that I always say things will never be as bad as you think they're going to be as well, right? Like we always have in our head, we come up with these like, what if this happens? This is going to be so bad. This person isn't going to like me, or blah, 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 right? My business will fail and all this stuff. And that it's always based off of this like one what if. But then when you look back at other times when you felt that, it has never really ended up as bad as you thought it was going to.
No.
And that can be a real saving grace, I think, sometimes from spiraling.
Absolutely. I mean, the power of thought, right? And I forget what it is, but it's like a negative thought is, or positive thought's 10 times more powerful than a negative thought, right? So, it's just really about, for me, that conditional thinking. It's like, I'm not enough. I can't do this. And I love the saying that was told to me is like, I'm always like, what if this goes wrong? And it's like, well, what if it goes right? Right? So when I find myself starting to spiral or get into that what if mentality, I just shift the narrative from what if it goes wrong to what if this is the best thing that could ever happen to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Can you speak to that a little bit more on like what that process looks like for you? Like when you ask yourself that question, how does that change the trajectory?
The only way to change it for me is to believe, right? Because I can say it to myself 100 times over in my mind. If I don't believe it in my heart or my gut, usually it doesn't unravel the way that I want, or I'll just continue to have that negative thought. So I have to fully surrender that belief of turning my fear into faith. And that is probably one of the things I struggle with most, is that belief.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like I would add to that like you have to put that then into action. Like how many times do we think the negative things where we're like, oh, but what if this happens? And then now your actions are actually starting to create that situation, Whereas like when we ask ourselves like, but what if it goes right? And then you take action on that. On like, what if it goes right? Okay, well, I'm going to go for it then.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, well, that's the key, right?
That's the key. Yeah. I mean, action is pretty much the key to, any forward movement. Mm-hmm. Right. So sometimes it's just about, if I get stuck in that thing, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to make a phone call to someone, whether it's reaching out for help or maybe it's a business opportunity that I'm avoiding making that phone call. Then boom, it was a positive phone call. I get the momentum to going to make another one or to take some more action. And, then it just kind of spirals in a positive way rather than a negative way. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, I love this. Like, you have such an inspiring story of recovery and just resiliency, and it is so encompassed in that whole realm of martial arts as well, with the discipline, consistency, resiliency, just all those principles that are so powerful, and really cool to see you sharing that with other people who need it in your world as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, of course.
Awesome.
Yeah, it has been. I know I had you waiting a little bit at the beginning here because I had some technical difficulty. So you've been so patient with me today. So I really appreciate that.
No worries.
Is there anything that we haven't said or that I haven't given you the opportunity to say that you really wanted to get out to anybody?
No, I think I'll just leave everyone with the message of, be yourself, in a world full of, fakeness. Just be who you are, because that's the most important thing, and that's what people will really love, is the true genuine. I know for me, I see through a lot of BS when people try to portray themselves a certain way, and I just, my wish for people is just to be themselves, whoever that is. Find your unique brilliance and give it to the world.
Yeah. And something you said too that really stuck with me is just like sticking to those core principles as a foundation to creating that change, right? And creating, whether it's recovery or you're just trying to change something to be more positive in your life. It's like going back to like those core principles of who am I, what makes me who I am, what makes me authentic. And I think if we can continue to come back to that and make decisions based on that, then, I mean, that's how you create the life that you want, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
Cool, man. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here and appreciate everybody listening and watching. We'll see you in the next episode.